All right, so November 22nd meeting of the Newcastle-Damariscotta Broadband Committees. RFI update and Tidewater date. Tidewater, we've set a date for December 6th at 3 p.m. in the Damariscotta town office in the meeting room. Hold on, I think I'm going to mute you for a second, Marty, because there's a little bit of feedback. There we go. December 6th, 3 p.m. Damariscotta town office in the meeting room for a live meeting, and also we'll do it on Zoom for people that would like to attend that way. Tidewater did talk to us about, they were a little uncomfortable with some of the questions that we put on the RFI, but I said, bring what you want to bring to the table, and we're obviously going to digest it. And basically they felt like they could be giving away too much information, which is something that we were talking about earlier. But I told them that what they do with the feasibility study will most likely satisfy a lot of the information we're looking for in the first place. Since then, Spectrum hasn't reached out at all, haven't heard anything from them, and haven't heard anything from any other provider either. So that's where we're at with the RFI right now. Tomorrow I have a Zoom meeting with Susan Corbett, who's in Mary Ellen's office, about a possible digital equity plan and other options that they provide, classes for people that are looking for the ability to use their devices better, using the internet better, these types of things. Excuse my voice, I'm a little under the weather. So she's going to address some digital inequity and affordability issues and see if we can improve on those fronts, because that's a consideration for the grant when we go forward, is what have the municipalities done to improve digital equity and address affordability. Went to a Mid-Coast managers meeting with Matt the other day, and we did have a chance to listen to some of the county people talk about how they're going to distribute some of the county ARPA funds, and there seemed to be at least some general consensus that broadband was definitely a target that they wanted to spend money. Of course, we all know there's 100 hands out and everybody wants a piece of the pie. So we'll have to see if they come out with any more direction on how they're going to finally agree to spend the money. The next Connect Maine meeting, someone might be able to, I think it's December 8th is what they've rescheduled the November meeting. So we may have a lot more information on the next grant window at that opportunity. I usually just check the minutes, so I'll definitely post the minutes when they come out, and I might tune in as well to figure out if they're going to release any more concrete information on when the grant window is going to open up. Let's see. Wanted to put a poll out to everybody here, especially the Newcastle people. When you guys began this process, have you run into any problems where people have a lack of conduit or a lack of utility poles in any neighborhoods?
No, I mean, I came in kind of late. We drove around certain parts of the town to determine who might not be still connected and so forth. But that was pretty much the limit of what I was doing. I don't know about you, Dave, or I know Chris Doherty and Mel were doing a lot of that sort of stuff.
There is a potential customer, a community member on the end of Happy Valley Road that has no poles to her house. So there's at least one out there that I know of.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. And they have conduit for electricity, you think, or it might come from the back of another road or something?
I don't know that she's on the electric grid even.
Oh, good. A real off the gridder.
Yeah, so we'll check with them.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's kind of one problem I'm trying to at least get some quotes on for. There's a couple roads in Damariscotta, one that's over 1,000 feet that the developer, when they started putting houses in there, didn't put any conduit for telecommunications, and there's no pole, so they buried all the electric underground, and then after like 1,000 feet they put in conduit for all the other houses. So they've gotten I had a Spectrum price it out earlier this summer when I asked them to come up with a number for every unserved road. And I think the number that they came up with was in the $40,000 range for 6 to 8 houses. So
Hmm.
trying to find people, at least in that type of situation, people that are willing to do quotes or willing to look at the work in the future, because that seems to be a kind of a barrier that people can't find the service that would actually help them in that way. With Spectrum, they'll all obviously offer to do it, and then there's private companies though also that would obviously just lay the conduit, and then the cable companies can come in and lay their cable. But
Shouldn't we get that information from Tidewater in this?
yeah, it's going to be
feasibility study?
interesting to see if they have that type of information, especially for like the road I'm thinking of right now, which is Nissen Farm, and then that's out on
Yeah,
Or
that-
forget
that-
it.
Back Meadow or
Back Meadow.
Standpipe. I can't remember.
I'll say from Bremen that, Tidewater didn't have that kind of level of detail until they actually started doing site surveys after the grant was awarded. And because those were they had been upfront in the proposal and going through the Connect Main process, that the installation fees and everything were just for within 250 feet of the public nearest, telephone pole, basically the nearest public road. So even though they didn't make it really overt that like private roads, private developments associations wouldn't count, or would have extra fees, $1 per foot aerial beyond the 250 feet from the, anyway, they make that all pretty transparent, but I don't think that residents in Bremen really understood how that would be, that become an issue. So now Bremen is almost built out, but the remaining couple dozen homes that won't be connected by the end of this year are because of similarly, over $10,000 to install conduit. Tidewater provides an estimate of what other companies would charge, but they don't lay conduit. So they told some residents here in Bremen to estimate $6 a foot for conduit by the time you've done the conduit and the other prep work, the trenching, all of that needed. But because Schedule 80 conduit is a lot more expensive right now, supply chain issues, it's actually probably more than that. $6 a foot estimate is what people are finding when they actually get quotes. So all that to say, good thinking ahead, Evan, because that isn't something that they'll necessarily, give you.
It's not on the first page of what they're going to address. Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of what I talked to most people on that road. I've talked to just about everybody, because they're fairly well organized for Damariscotta people. They've all talked to each other about what they want to do. And most of them aren't interested in fiber. They'd rather just get cable now. And I said, well, whatever you do, I hope that you lay conduit, and I hope that you lay 2 runs. So at least they have the option later on if things move down the road. But right now, everybody on that road is fairly set in their ways into trying to get cable and not waiting for fiber. But good information to have, and I'm gonna keep digging and see if we can get other companies to give some estimates.
And this is Nissen Road?
This
in
is
Damariscotta?
Nissen Farm Lane.
Yes,
Yep,
right.
that's the name of it. There's a couple, and then there's a couple other ones that are small roads with either like 1 or 2 houses on it. There's quite a few that they got their electric buried, but then they never got anything else buried. They never put any conduit in or whatever. But that particular road has 8 houses built, I think it is, and then they've got another something like 10 lots that are for sale, and there's 3 houses under construction over there right now, so it's could go up quite a bit and be quite a few people over in that direction. Marty, would you like to talk about, I can't remember what you were addressing just a minute ago. Still got you muted. There you go.
So, yeah, I was going to talk about Axiom, but while I'm just going to forward this to you, Evan. I'll talk to it, and maybe while I'm beginning to talk, you can Just give me a second here.
Evan, did anything happen at the conference that Krista presented at that we should know about?
I went to the first day. First day covered digital equity and then some financing options that people were going over through different circumstances, and that was pretty good. The second day I can't say I got to attend, so I'm waiting for it to come on YouTube or however they're going to present it.
I attended both days. I saw your name on there, Evan, the first day. And there was some interesting points on the second day. It wasn't earth-shattering. The whole thing wasn't earth-shattering to me. I kind of knew generally all the things they were talking about and some of the nitty-gritty that I wanted to get into. They were at too high a level, but that'd be my 2 cents. So I forwarded something to Evan. I attended a Zoom session one-on-one with the president of Axiom. And what I forwarded to Evan were a list of the projects that are ready to be dug and lists projects that are in the planning process with Axiom and other various stages of projects. I found the company to be pretty creative, and the CEO knew what he was talking about. He personally does all the planning with all the towns. I did mention that an RFI had probably arrived from the Twin Villages, and I said, please be on the lookout for it. He said he certainly will sift through the pile and pull yours out and make sure he addresses it. I did tell him that the 3 towns were loosely communicating, and we hadn't figured out, what we might do or if we might do something in the future. So at least he had the 3 towns linked in some way in his mind. So we spoke. It's an interesting model, a very interesting model. He basically, I would call it loosely a public private. What he does is he comes through and he does, he said me a ballpark for the planning. That would be everything needed up to the dig. When I say the dig, meaning the cables are ready to be, the fiber's ready to be run. He's purely a fiber company. And so there's a planning process he said for Nobleboro, he estimated about $10,000 for the whole planning process, which really evaluates what has to be done, where it has to be done. He does know that we have both Tidewater and Spectrum in Nobleboro. I told him that, and he was perfectly fine working with towns who have a mixture of ISPs in different areas. He knows the Mannings, Shirley and Randall over at Tidewater on a first name basis. They know him. He knows their strengths and weaknesses. He similarly knows Spectrum on a first name basis and all the other providers I mentioned that are probably in your RFI list. People like Otelco and GWI and Pioneer. He knew all of them. Okay. So what I found, I'll just tell you briefly what the model is. After the project is planned, he basically figures out how many roads need to get fiber, how many miles of roads. And this includes both public and private roads, so that their solution is end to end to the household, not on some pole, a mile away. It's to the household. So they do the plan end to end. And I guess they must evaluate people who want it somehow. In no sense putting it down a mile-long road if the person at the other end isn't going to ever buy it. So they get it, a number of miles, and then they compute how much money is needed to do the build out. And then they aggressively, maybe with or without the town's help, they go after as much possible grant money as they could get. And this is where he piped up and said, if the 3 towns were working together, we probably could get more money going after big grants as 3 towns rather than one at a time, or one and then 2. And then when he figures out how much money is needed in addition to what he got from grants, he then proposes to the town, it probably has to be voted on by all the towns, to float a bond that the town would vote on. And it would be, a 20-year bond, whatever money was needed. And let's say it was voted in. Then what happens is they start to build, and no money comes out of the taxes, but the people who choose to buy into the service get a monthly recurring cost like Tidewater and Spectrum. And of that monthly cost that they pay, some percentage of that goes to pay the bond. So when it's fully up and running, every town they've served so far is that the money goes to pay the bond, and it completely pays the bill for the bond payment. And then there's a portion, pre-specified portion that they get for running the network. But since basically the town with the grant money, they at the end of the bond, when the bond is paid off, the town owns all the fiber, and they will continue to operate it. But if the town is not happy with the way they're operating it, they could bring in another ISP to do the operations part, given that the fiber is already in place. And then after the bond is paid off, the same percentage that was going to pay the bond off goes into the town coffers forever, as long as it's operating. And so the town does get some ROI, beyond paying the bond off, they continue to get residuals on it to the future. So I do have a call to a woman down, I think she's in Southport, and she was the head of a committee that involved Southport, Georgetown, and Arelsic. Those three towns kind of got together and negotiated as one unit. And we're trying to have a call because she's very excited about this company. And I was pretty excited because, at least on paper, it sounds like it's too good to be true. And when I mentioned that in Noblesboro, it kind of breaks out where, Tidewater at most is going to maybe serve 40% of the town in the end state. I'm not sure. And Spectrum currently serves maybe about 30% of the town. And then we have a certain amount that's unserved. And so, they said if they could get, if they could lay wire and serve half the town and overbuild in the Spectrum area and try to pull customers away from Spectrum over time, then they'd be perfectly happy with a Tidewater Axiom split 50-50 and push Spectrum out. His sense was the Spectrum technology was not a good investment long term. I happen to agree with him, just from my techie background, but I know it's here, and people have it, and if they have it and it's giving them decent service, then they might say, just leave me alone. I'll pay my bill, as long as they're not buying their triple play or one of those big packages. So that's it's a quick summary. Very interesting company, and I hope they respond to your RFI, and certainly let's keep in touch. And that you're free to. Mark sent me that list after the call, and I sent it on to you because the fact that they're working heavily in the Mid-Coast area, it's not like Otelco, for example, is another company, but their home office is down in Alabama, and they know Maine is underserved in general, and so they've set up some offices in Maine, and they do have some contracts in Maine, but it's not a local company. Mark himself is a Mainer, born and raised here, lived here all his life. So he believes he understands, and he has been in politics, so he believes he understands the political side of this whole mess, if you will. try to be kind. Anyway, I thought it was exciting, and I hope when you talk to him, when he responds to your RFI, or send him an email. He'd be more than happy. He's a very pleasant fellow to chat with.
Yeah, I hope he responds as well. Tom asked a question. Do you know if he mentioned who maintains the network, the fiber and the poles between a partnership like that?
Well, he works with they don't own the trucks. They have partners that lay the fiber, and they said they have everything from fiber that's strung along poles, fiber that's in conduit underground, and then he said we also have fiber that is lying in undisturbed woods on the ground. And I said, really? He said, yes, it works perfectly fine. There's no disturbance to it. It's just a piece of glass. And as long as the woods are undisturbed, no snowmobile trails, going over it, or any areas that are disturbed, they would bury those underground. But I thought that was an exciting way to deal with somebody who's a mile away from the nearest pole.
There's definitely a lot of interesting things people are doing, especially for people on islands that are hard to get to.
Yeah, and he said they're doing Cliff Island. That's not on the list. He mentioned it, but it's not on the list. And then I think Chabig is on the list. And then of course with doing the fact that the fact that they tracked the town of Southport, Georgetown, and Arousek, given that those are kind of the ends of peninsulas, they obviously, are heavily attacking some of the remote areas that wouldn't get service otherwise.
Yep. Well, good. I hope he replies to the RFI as well, because I'd like to get some more information in the future. If it doesn't apply to this, then it might apply somewhere else just as likely.
Yeah.
Melinda Kinney actually just emailed me back from Spectrum, and I'm copying her email in the chat, and maybe we can put together a response to send back to her in regards to the RFI. So she asked, they are interested. They had 3 initial questions. Will RFIs be considered that are not at 100 speed threshold, or if the network is scalable to deliver those speeds? 2, is there a list of addresses / street names that can be shared for these 2 towns? And 3, with respect to the format of the RFI responses, is it okay to provide responses in a different format? So we can delve into that however we'd like to.
I think it's surprising that they asked for addresses and street names.
Yeah.
I'm sure they have access to that information.
Not only that, but I've sent
Yeah.
Shelley Winchenbach a list of all of the unserved roads that I could find based on their own maps. So I don't know about Damariscotta.
It's interesting. She asked about a different format, but she doesn't say, it doesn't appear like what format do they want to submit it in.
Well, I think the way we listed a lot of information, just line by line by line, if we want to just question and answer responded. Yeah, Mary Ellen?
Oh, no, I think you're
Oh.
right. I'm sorry. I was going to say something else. That's okay. Yeah.
But any conversation or ideas on how we should address at least the 100 by 100 megabit speed threshold? Because we can always consider it. There's no, we can always accept it.
Yeah, I think that's the answer is that they can respond the best they can, and we'll consider whatever they put in there. But
Okay.
I hope they would think they're at a disadvantage if they say they can do something less than that only.
One thing I was going to mention more about Axiom, he mentioned that at this point, anything that they're building is capable of one gig by 1 gig up down, and they already are looking out at 10 gig down, whether
Yep.
it's 10 gig up too. But they're looking at applications. They have some business customers that are looking for very, very high bandwidth. So,
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what people really are going to need in the next 5 to 10 years,
yeah.
particularly.
Well, what he pointed out was it'd be great if you could get your backbone to be able to handle the higher speeds, so you don't have to be dealing with infrastructure build out for the next few years.
Yep. And Krista actually did include that article in the agenda and Zoom link, and great article about what Spectrum was doing in Leeds. If you guys didn't catch that, it's in the chat. Basically, they hired a private think tank to distribute pamphlets throughout the town. Leeds is, I think, attempting to build their own municipal-owned network, and Charter sent out a private consultant to hand out these flyers and say that it's government overreach and it's not going to work, and just to sow discontent within the town. So that's kind of some of the games that they're playing to keep customers in areas like that.
Notice that on the list, Evan and others on the call, Leeds is on the Axiom list.
Gotcha.
He
Yeah, so
explained, Mark explained to me all of what Spectrum and others are doing to try to, protect. I've read the article you sent about
Yep.
that overreach, but Leeds went with Axiom from what he told me. There was another town up there that went exactly the opposite way. They got the same marketing paraphernalia and decided not to go with Axiom. So,
gotcha. Yeah, it's gonna. I think there'll be more stories like that as we go forward, especially in the next year or two, of different companies trying to stop proposals from doing any type of expansion. Go ahead. Anybody?
Yeah, I just have a quick thing. So like Marty just mentioned, we've worked with Axiom for some years, and as he said, it's a really excellent, fairly innovative company, and very generous with their time. But they both helped with community planning and then network design work, and they have seen it all, right? Probably, right, Krista, all the different kind of models that are out there. They tend to want to do a public-private proposal, but I think Southport is going to go municipal utility, I believe, if that's correct. So, no, but they've been pretty active and very successful. I don't know how they've managed it, but they were able to get some of those USDA grants from Monhegan and I think in Rousick. And again, that is still a challenge, for really securing getting those projects done, because USDA. So be careful of USDA. USDA up the costs once the communities receive those awards. Which there's a rationalization for that from USDA, but for small towns, an extra $100,000, not easy to find. So again, thanks to Mark and other people who have led the battles going forward here on that, but it's still even some of those larger sums of money that we're looking at or that we're tempted with can be challenging here. But no, Axiom is super company.
Yeah, they've definitely got a reputation everywhere for going places where other people aren't going.
Right.
And that's what we're always looking for, I think.
yeah.
From the Newcastle people, do you have a list of street names that we should submit to them, or should we not even consider submitting a list of addresses?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something they can get on their own. They don't need us to do that. I trust that they need to just contact whoever does the 911 lists or maps. I mean, should have that. I'm not sure if we could easily get our hands on that without any expense.
Right.
We've already given them the names of the roads. What they wanted was the house numbers. And that was so extreme that we just gave up at that point, because
Sure.
not going to go back and check out each number, but they have the names of the roads.
Plus, they also wanted the name of the consumers before, I believe.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, I ended up doing the E911 thing to give them a list of house numbers when they eventually did come back with an estimate for every road. So I guess, should I send what I have from Damariscotta, or? Should they be doing their own due diligence?
You know, I would think
Put a
it's,
price tag on it, charge them for it.
It's hard to do that now when you have given it for free.
At least I know I've already sent it to Shelley Winchenbach, so I can just forward that I've already sent a list of what they've given us for at least that.
I mean, the only thing you gotta be careful of is you do give them what we have for information. We don't even know if it's absolutely correct, and if they use it without them checking it, you know,
Yeah, and I can't,
Should
yeah,
be-
and go ahead.
no, it's just, there should be a caveat there that says, here's what we got.
Yeah, we don't know if it's accurate or not. That's what
Right.
we believe.
and I'm concerned if other providers have an issue with us, you know, sending information out and not sharing it with them. as
Yeah,
well.
you'd have to send it out to everybody if you know, whatever you.
Sure. So on the case with Damariscotta, I can just inform her that we've sent that information to Shelley Winchenbach previous to the best, at least for Damariscotta, for the best of our knowledge. That's some of the areas. I'll just say that just to keep everything together, I suppose. And then with regards to the format, I think we should just tell them similarly with the first question that we'll consider and look at whatever they want to hand into us, I would say. I think that's fair.
Consider being the very loose word, right?
Exactly. We can consider. Yeah, we'll have exact, and that's what I'm worried about. Is like how quickly is this type of situation going to turn into them petitioning that they weren't adequately considered.
Right, and that's just to say, you should just say the the request for information lays out the details, and they can respond to it as they seem best.
Cool. I think that we've got a good response, and I'll put it together and email it
Yeah,
with
maybe
this.
not considering to consider, but for them to submit what they think is best, yeah, or responsive.
I'll have to, let me pull it up real quick just so we don't misquote it.
Hmm.
I'm over here on consolidated DSL, so it takes me a minute to find a thing or two from time to time. There we go. For the under 3.2, for the purposes of this RFI, broadband means internet services that meet or exceeds the Connect Main state definition of 100 by 100 symmetrical service and infrastructure that can support greater capacity and speeds, i.e. 1000 over 1000. So I think that's all we need to say in reference to that. Any other thoughts on that piece? Other than we'll just look them over, but our stated information is we want 100 over 100 to be the main focus.
What is the date, Evan, that we need to have their questions come in?
Today was
Remember.
supposed to be the call in, so maybe that's why she waited to send any type of communication until today. I'm pulling it back up again. Just 1 second.
Although she didn't opt to call in.
Or yeah, ask for any other information. So the 22nd, which is today, questions from respondents are due. So I guess that's the 3, and then December 6th, answers to respondents posted.
Hmm.
So we actually can wait until December the 6th, or we can just get them right out the door,
Okay,
which is what I would probably opt to do rather than,
Yeah, I would respond to her immediately, but I
Yep.
think her questions are answered by reading the RFI.
I like that we have an attorney on staff here. So I will go ahead. I don't know if you were trying to say something, Mary Ellen.
No, no.
one question, Evan,
Mhm.
when we send out responses to a question from, say, Tidewater, are we obligated to send those same answers to everybody? Seem, like if you're bidding a project, anybody that's got a question that needs to be answered to everybody, so everybody knows, what's going on. But I don't think we made it clear in our RFI in that regard.
Gotcha. Yeah, that one's a little outside of my purview, so I'm not sure.
I think what we've seen in other kind of grants, and maybe Krista's seen that as well, with state agencies across the board, beyond broadband, is that any questions that's asked and answered is shared with everyone.
Yeah.
So.
That's the only logical way to do it.
So
yeah,
how do we
oth-
share it? Just by posting it at our website or?
I could just refer back to all the people that we sent the RFI to, the list of questions on the 6th, to those that they weren't
Mhm.
involved in asking themselves.
Hmm. Does that not give them time to have follow-up questions for, people who didn't ask the original question?
Well, I think that's back to what you said before, is that's established in the RFI. So if we have the date of the 12th to send back, if it's not information that any other respondent is interested in answering, then I think we fulfill our duty by producing all the answers responded on the 6th, if there's any more that come in.
Oh, you mean do everybody on the 6th instead of
Right.
doing?
If nobody else
responses.
asks questions, then we just respond with
Okay,
the only other questions answered.
yeah, that makes sense to me, I guess. Gather all the questions, answer them all at once.
Right. I think that's a good way to do it.
Seems fair.
So I'll draft an email here.
This update might be of interest to Evan and Mary Ellen or others, but South Bristol did end up, I guess, submitting a planning grant application to Kendra Joe. But yeah, I hadn't seen a draft or anything of it, and it was, yeah, it could have used a meeting, I think, ahead of time, because I don't think, to my knowledge, they have anyone as a committee besides Jeff Casey working on it at this point, unless either Evan or Mary Ellen have heard updates.
No,
I
no.
haven't heard about it at all. So yeah,
Mhm.
pretty interesting.
Yeah, so I told, I think, Kendra Joe reached out to me saying, so we got this application, but it was, yeah, fairly misguided. Asked for a lot more than the planning grants actually give out. And so anyway, we're going to try to connect with them, but I think Mary Ellen and I both encouraged the point person there in town to, try to broaden the effort a bit and create a committee, bring a committee together. So I'll go back to recommending that before necessarily jumping into applying for planning grant that isn't really based on a community goal yet. So
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be a big committee, right? You know, so you gotta start somewhere. So if they start with three colleagues or three people who know each other, it's, you know, it gains momentum here. So, yeah, I'm not sure why they haven't made a tiny bit of progress with that, but
Yeah.
it takes a lot of work. You guys have put in a lot of time, so it takes a lot of time to get this stuff going.
It's all time. It seems like a 4-hour meeting and a 2-day job, and it's a lot of
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
All right, I'm just about to address these last two, and then I'll copy and paste my response in here before I send it.
Krista, it was great to see Kendra Joe on the news recently regarding Vinyl Haven and the rising sea level. So actually, it was that special climate change thing. So I go, wait a second, I know her.
Yeah, and she was on Maine Public last week or a couple weeks ago for Broadband as well. So
Nice.
yeah.
Is she the face of the Island Institute now then, or is it?
Of the
multiple
broad,
people?
she's the strategic lead of Broadband and Sea Level Rise, because they're both kind of infrastructure, coastal infrastructure related.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just don't put the poles underwater, right? Put them inland. Nice. It was great to see her.
Yeah.
I had thought that Susan Corbett was president of Axiom. Has she stepped away from that?
Hmm.
So they split the company a couple years ago, Tom, so that's a good question. So a couple, I forgot now exactly how many, but so Susan not only has been doing national digital equity, but she's been doing something like Axiom Education, but they split from Axiom everything else. I don't know, you know, it's been 3 or 4 years or so. So she's more on the digital equity side now.
Although she is still
Oh, well,
invested,
yeah.
I think invested in Axiom Technologies, but yeah, she, as far as a, I don't know, it's not exactly shareholder because they work, yeah, they work.
I can share you a little bit there. I asked Mark specifically about that. She owns, I think, 51% and he owns 49% of the company. So he is kind of the face and runs the you know, all the operation, the builds, the planning, and she's more involved in what Mary Ellen was just saying about the digital equity and education. So I don't think she's involved in the day-to-day running of the
I don't
company,
think so.
but she is a major shareholder.
A quick logistical question. Does this committee, are you basically going by Newcastle-Damariscotta or Twin Villages or?
I've been just posting it everywhere as Newcastle-Damariscotta, and I just gave Newcastle the front spot because they were established first, just to give them that honorific.
It sounds good to me.
All right, in regards to the format, I'm not quite sure I remember exactly how we worded. With respect to the format of the RFI responses, is it okay to provide responses in a different format? And I guess I would say you can respond in whichever way you see fit, but we've got our list of questions we'd like to have answered. Any input on that? And let's see.
It's 1,000 square foot out.
Yeah, I wonder if, I guess, I don't think that George and Evan, whether you worked on a scoring rubric yet but basically, you know, based on the questions you've asked so far, just being able to make your own job easier when you're receiving the responses, it would be good to just have like a little grid matrix to be able to score every submission that you get. And I guess the only issue with the format would be, you know, you want it to be clear whether they've answered every question. So if they're just using that question, might be because they have a standard
Sure.
thing that they send out to all communities saying that this is how we work. And so if they do have that, then you'd at least want them to be able to provide, whether it's sticky notes on it or comments or annotations saying like question 6, question 2, question 9, even if they're out of order. I guess it would help to know her specific reason for asking that question, but I think that, yeah, you'll accept what's given to you as long as it's clear where every question you've asked is being addressed. That'll
That's
make it
good.
a lot easier to score it.
Okay, so that helps. I'll
Yeah.
almost got this typed out.
You brought a little bowl and everybody.
Okay. Put this in the chat so we can look over it. Well, that didn't come out as clearly as I wanted it to. Let me see if I can put some breaks in there so it's easier to read. Shoo. There. I don't know if that helps anybody now that I've messed it up a third time, but there you go. Any thoughts, or does that look all right to send? Got one thumbs up. Do I hear a second thumb up?
I don't get to vote though. Just
Yeah,
saying.
It looks clear and readable.
I'm fine.
Cool. Then that is what I will send.
And then did you decide that you will put the questions with each of these answers and send them to the other RFI receivers?
Yep. I
Okay.
think that's our game plan, is to do that on the 6th. And then at this point, seeing as how I think we put our deadline for questions to be out for today, we don't even have to answer questions by our own schedule unless we want to be nice people.
If some comes in tomorrow. you mean?
Sure. But other than that, pending any other submissions of questions, I think that we're doing all right and we're all set going forward for next meeting. If there's anything else anybody would like to address or any new info we haven't gone over.
I'm just wondering what job Matt is interviewing for.
Yeah.
Retirement, right?
The last I knew is he was interested with doing some interim work if anybody had any available, and I think there's going to be a plenty supply of that for
Right.
the consistent future.
And he's on the selection committee for Damariscotta.
Yeah, I don't know actually.
Right. Oh, really? Yeah, I assume he is. But
I just know that they talked to Don Garish, I think, about looking for a replacement and doing that in the next 6 months or whatever their schedule is.
Right.
And that's what they're up to. I think he's going to spend plenty of time on a boat somewhere. Maybe he'll find some sand between his toes.
Right. Probably it's more likely a kayak though, right? As
Yep.
opposed to a boat.
Either way. All right, so December 6th, 3 p.m. for everybody that wants to go in person at the meeting room, Damariscotta Town Office, and we'll also have the Zoom ready to go. So anybody that doesn't want to attend in person can ask questions and be just a bigger part of the meeting.
And we'll be watching for like paper copy of the study ahead of time. So,
Yeah, I'll address what he can send us, and then we'll try and get that dispersed ASAP.
great. Thank you.
Cool beans. All right, see everybody in
Happy
2
Thanksgiving,
weeks.
everyone.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Take care.